Don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, it's another week of CinemAddicts. This is episode 195. We were actually, me, Bruce Perky, and Eric Holmes, we were talking a lot of shop talk. We have a lot of big news next week regarding CinemAddicts, Anderson Cowan, Eric Holmes, Bruce Perky, me. Eric Holmes, can you tease us what's going to happen next week? Can you say something, or would it be spoiling a little bit too much regarding the fate and the future of CinemAddicts? You have anything to say?
Everything's going to crap, man. It's all falling apart, but there's new merch on finderfilmpodcast.com.
Finderfilmpodcast.com. New CinemAddicts merch. Hey, it might be the last time you can actually purchase CinemAddicts merch. Who knows? That might be a doomsday thing, or maybe not. Who knows? I'm trying to be really pessimistic, Eric Holmes. Bruce Perky, doomsday for next week, or just a changing of the guard, a change is going to come, bad change, what?
I'm still stuck on the fate. I thought we were going into some kind of a weird crossover in the Fast and Furious franchise, and now we're like in that now somehow. So, I mean, I'm getting bald. I can try to be family.
You think you're bald? I have a bald spot right in the middle of my head. It's like a big.
I got it in the middle of my head too. It's like the whole middle of my head.
Okay, Eric, are you going bald too or not? Are you okay?
You're gonna have to look and tell me.
Full head. Oh, you're not. See, you're
get that luscious hair out of my face.
Yeah.
Well, god of a man. Too, so maybe if I like cut it and it's short, maybe there's something. I don't know. I don't look at the top of my head very often.
Eric is like what, like 6'3". He's got a beautiful head of hair. He's younger than me. Just get out of my face. With all that beautifulness.
Very like a squirrel. Yeah.
So you should be happy.
I don't got all that extra flesh like tripping me up. It's a family show.
Eric Holmes. He is the spirit, the heart and soul of CinemAddicts. I'm teasing it for next week because we had a long talk about the future and the existence of one CinemAddicts, and I was being a Mr. Doom and Gloom, and Eric Holmes was the savior with a sword coming in for justice and truth and the American way. Is that correct, Eric Holmes? Sword, justice, truth, the American. Yes. Oh, very terse.
I was talking about swords earlier, but again, it's a family show. But
it's a family show, but are
it's
these
more of a dagger, really? But
yes, more of a dagger. Very good family show hashtag. Look, here's the thing. For this week, we are covering a bunch of movies. There's a documentary called Desperate Souls, Dark City, and the Legend of Midnight Cowboy. It's a documentary about Midnight Cowboy, overrated movie. Next up is going to be, I'm kidding. There's a movie that Eric's going to review called Sheroes. There's another movie that, Eric didn't get to it. He's been doing a lot of interviews in movies. I don't know, maybe it might be a screening link thing. There's a Western called Surrounded that, me and Bruce are going to cover this. There's a movie called Mad Heidi. I don't know. I got a link and I think it might be up Eric's alley. Might not be Bruce's alley because he mentioned something about several minutes is kind of akin to how my dates usually go. And then there's finally Eric and Bruce covered this documentary called Here is Better. So we have a lot of stuff to get to for CinemAddicts. Thank you guys for listening to our show. Anderson hopefully will be back, I guess, in a weird way next week. We're going to have some really big stuff. And then also our box movie is the aforementioned Midnight Cowboy, way overrated moving forward. So we're going to cover a lot of these movies.
Would you call it a 4-star movie, Greg?
A 0-star movie. Just kidding. That's a joke. I'm being sarcastic. Eric Holmes, I have to apologize personally because Eric, can you tease a couple of the interviews you have this week, which lazy Greg Srzavonsky has not posted on our YouTube channel yet? What do I have to still post? I'll tell you.
We got Jordan Gertner from Sheroes, which we're covering. We got how'd
that talk go with Jordan? You guys bond on Sheroes? Was it a good talk?
Yeah, and actually, Jordan Gertner. I mean, we'll get into it when we talk about Sheroes.
Okay.
I believe Sheroes was their directorial debut, but they've done some producing. In fact, let me pull up. You know what? Since we're talking about it, I'll just pull it up. They produced Spring Breakers, Killing Inside Me, Bully, Virgin Suicides.
Oh, very good.
What's that movie? Buffalo 66. they've produced some straight up bangers.
I heard Anderson hated that movie, Buffalo 66. He's not a big
fan. That's what he says. I don't get it. It seemed like a movie that he'd like. But
I was saying, Anderson Cowan, would you prefer Buffalo 66 or Another Stakeout? And he said, well, I like Emilio's mustache a little bit better, so Another Stakeout it is. So
and a steak out, all you steak in. I just like steak.
Steak, daggers, swords. We're kidding Anderson Cowan. Anderson Cowan is a huge fan of Buffalo 66. And I'm going to put words in Bruce's mouth by saying you are a huge fan of Buffalo 66 as well. Am I presuming this, or have you seen that movie yet?
Yeah, I saw it when it came out, whenever that was. Was that 99, 2000?
Okay, way back in the day.
Yeah. I liked it. It's good. I'm not a huge fan. I didn't go back and have to obsessively watch it, but I do like it quite a bit. Yes.
Was it as overrated as Midnight Cowboy?
Absolutely as overrated as Midnight Cowboy.
Okay. I'm talking here, and I'm walking here as well. I'm just kidding. We'll see if I give it.
Ratso Grego. That's what I'm going to start calling you.
No, call me. What is it? He doesn't like being called Ratso. He likes being called
Rico. Call me Rico.
Call me
Rico Salvador.
Rico Suave. Here is better. You also have another interview with Here is Better. We're going to post that on our Find Your Film podcast feed. Eric Holmes, what can you say about your interview? Was it a good one? Who you talked to and what?
Yeah, it's that one was kind of a downer just because how the what the documentary is about. It's about mental health, PTSD, but we did manage to. Can't be a downer all the time. It did manage to get some fun out of them towards the end, but that was another good one as well.
Okay, so we're covering a lot of interesting and good movies this week.
Greg, yeah. I don't do bad interviews. Even the worst interview I did, the person I was interviewing saved it. So
that was not a bad interview, Eric Holmes. You were completely
on my part. It was on their part. It was great.
I listened to your interview with Trip Jennings for Elemental Reimagine Wildfire, and you did really good because your first question, if I believe, was talking about the truth in documentary filmmaking. You phrased it correctly. It was fine. It was very good. You are being too self-effacing. You be more like me, Greg Shrusvasi, the greatest interviewer in the world. How about that? You like that?
I'm just trying to give credit where it's due. Trip Jennings,
went
above and beyond in that interview.
Yes,
I was struggling, and he brought it home. So.
And bringing it home, how many stars did you give that movie?
I mean, that was an easy 5 for me because I mean, when you do a movie like that and there's nothing left on the table, what else can you give it? How do you make a better movie than what he did? He just knocked it out of the park.
Again, so if you have digital on demand, look it up on your various digital outlet. It is Elemental Reimagine Wildfire. Again, Elemental Reimagine Wildfire. Eric, again, if you live near a wildfire area or if you just want to be educated in the whole business of wildfires, it's a must see for you, right? For people.
And just to not only teach you about wildfires, but it teaches you ways that the science of all of it, which is really interesting. Okay. It's good stuff.
Speaking of really interesting, on all of this stuff will be found on our Find Your Film podcast feed, which we will be doing a lot more coverage on that podcast feed. So please subscribe to us on that podcast feed as well. Now, also, we interviewed for about 45 minutes last week Mark Pellington for this new movie, Survive. From your recollection, Bruce Perky, how did that interview with Mr. Pellington go?
I remember it being a pretty cool interview. I mean, I didn't do a lot of talking, which is fine with me. He did a lot of the talking, which is great. And he was a really down-to-earth and forthright interview subject about his own work. I really like that. He's like one of those directors that doesn't seem too precious with his own work. He's willing to say what he thinks is great, but he's also sometimes he'll say I had a job and I did the best I could with what they gave me, and I wanted to do a good job by what I had in front of me. I just think he was really interesting and kind of to see a person who's made lots of movies as opposed to someone that's in the second movie of their career, and kind of see that perspective, and also someone who's gone through, like we have, these various generations of how movies are presented and brought to us and produced and all that. So I think it's a very interesting interview for film lovers, honestly.
Yeah, it's a great interview for film lovers. We cover a bunch of his work, and he actually, for 45 minutes, we get a pretty interesting look at his career. I mean, I'm looking at his IMDb right now. There's so many movies of his that we haven't covered. So I'm excited to see the ones that I really love. Maybe there's going to be a couple of his that he's done that maybe I'm not a big fan of, but I'm just biasly, I love him as a filmmaker, and he is just a workhorse and visionary, I think. I loved him ever since Arlington Road, and obviously his various music videos. Eric, before we start doing the reviews, your just overall impression of Mark Pellington. First time for you to interview him last week, and good job when you look at you being an interviewer. You actually tied in the first interview I did with him several months ago, and you tied it into your question about success. I don't do that because I don't do my homework. But what did you think of overall of that Pellington interview?
Everything Bruce said, similar to when I interviewed George Gallo. George Gallo's been at it for a while. Mark Pellington's been at, like, you get when you have filmmakers like that, not just filmmakers, but people that have been doing whatever the thing is for a long time. They got a different kind of take on it than most people do. And I think it's a lot more interesting take because you don't just talk about the movie at hand. You got a whole history of work that they've done that you can talk to him about, and a bunch of wisdom can be drawn from it for people either getting into the business, just getting into movies in general. And he was a wealth of knowledge. And actually, now that I think of it, we talked about Mark Pellington doing a podcast. Maybe he should hook up with George Gallo and the two of them. Oh my God, do a weekly podcast. I'd be there. Day one.
So good. Just two really interesting filmmakers who've done a lot of work. And yeah, that'd be a great twosome on that. They do a better job than all three of us, right? Don't we do a horrible job, Bruce Burkett, covering films? What do you think?
Two of the three of us? I don't know. I mean, we have to just figure out which two.
Dry wit. Do you have dry wit, Eric Holmes? Because I don't have any wit. Do you have any kind of that? You like?
No, my wit's sopping wet.
Oh, very good. Hashtag family
but not
show.
Very large. It's just kind of petite.
Yeah. Kind of like a pop zit.
Now,
no.
Oh, wow. That is graphic. That is graphic, Eric Holmes. Speaking of graphic, it's not too graphic, but I think it's very emotionally taxing, but it's also a very visually immersive film. We were talking about Mark Pellington. His new film, we will actually post links on the show notes where it's available on digital formats, is Survive, again, directed by Mark Pellington. And here's a plot synopsis. Quote, when their plane crashes on a remote snow-covered mountain, Jane and Paul have to fight for their lives as they are the only remaining survivors. So yeah, basically their plane crashes out in the wilderness, out in the snowy mountains and wilderness, and Jane and Paul basically have to band together to survive. Jane is played by Sophie Turner, and Paul is played by Corey Hawkins. Here's my little mini review of it. Both of them do an excellent job as the leads. It's not just a plane crash movie. It's also a movie about mental health. Jane is suicidal. She's had emotional mental problems, and she was actually planning on committing suicide. It's on the trailer before the plane crashed. And now she has to rethink her life after this tragedy. And then Paul is her new friend, again, played by Corey Hawkins. And it's about their friendship as they both try to, quote unquote, survive this very traumatic ordeal. Now, we all said we love Mark Pellington, but we try to be very unbiased reviewers. Are you being unbiased with your review, Bruce? What did you think of Survive? Did it work for you?
It worked okay for me. Let's put it that way. It wasn't like spectacular, but it was entertaining. So I guess the biggest approach I have with this movie, the thing you have to kind of face at the front end of this, I think, is you have to go into it thinking this is not going to be a gritty, super realistic view of how to survive in the wilderness after a plane crash, because there's definitely some things that happen in here where you're like, okay, have they eaten anything yet? How long has this been? Right. Or there's some things like where they have to get down some precarious situations. You're like, I don't think that would actually be able to happen that way. But this is one of those movies where you kind of like an action movie, right? Certain action movies, you have to kind of go, okay, I'm going with it because the laws of physics here aren't exactly real, or maybe the bad guys shoot 1,000,000 bullets but never hit them, but the good guy hits everyone he shoots, that kind of thing. This isn't quite to that level, but there's definitely some things here where you're like, okay, that's not probably quite how that works, but I'm going to go with it because this is the story and we're just following the story, and it's giving us the characters in precarious situations that may or may not be 100% realistic. And if you go with that, I think you'll have a pretty fun time with it. It's not going to be the most spectacularly original movie you've ever seen, but also I think it's way more fun than it could be. And also, I'm not going to spoil it. He talks about the production of this movie and how it was originally meant to be I guess, rolled out to people. Yeah. And that makes it kind of almost more impressive when you know that like, you're like, wow, I didn't consider that at all when I watched this movie. I didn't know that was what this, I just thought it was a movie and it was doing its movie things and it was, working most of the way through for me. So I would say overall, I had a good time with it. Like I said, it didn't, super wow me, but it was fun.
Yeah. This movie wowed me. I was actually wowed because, again, Sophie Turner, Corey Hawkins, very believable. They have chemistry. Play best friends.
They're really good. I will agree with you on that too.
Yeah. You're wondering if are they look, it is a very sad situation what they're going through. Are they going to be possible love interests, or they're just going to remain friends? It's going to be answered within the realms of the movie. This movie cost $8.5 million to make, shot over 40 days, and I believe for the budget, it looks really, really good for the budget. So I tweeted that you should definitely see this movie on the big screen because there are some moments, these wide, and actually, Bruce, you asked him the question about these wide open vistas where they shot over in the mountains. I believe it's called Dolomitas, somewhere in the Italian Alps. So some of that's in the Alps and some of them is in a soundstage, but you can actually feel the visual breadth of Survive. And then another part of it, I don't know if it will work for some, it worked for me, is a little bit of the opening act deals with Jane's mental health and being part of a support group and all that stuff leading up to the plane crash. That worked for me as well. I'm a huge Sophie Turner fan. So all of the elements really worked. And then the final act, I was surprised with. Maybe Bruce, you're more experienced with viewing these things than I am, but I was surprised with how it ended. And there is I'm just going to say one thing. There is a B movie element to it that I enjoyed because there is a fight in the movie that come on. I had a good time with. Eric Holmes. I've been talking too much. Yield the floor to you, sir. What did you think of Survive?
Yeah, I really like this one a lot. So I didn't know watching this that this was a Quibi movie. And then after finding that out, it totally made sense because the first part of the movie feels like its own, like a Girl Interrupted thing. And that's really good. And then it turns into like a airplane kind of snakes on a plane, but no snakes, just the plane going down on, like alive. And that part's really good. And then you got the survival parts, and that part's really like I can see after knowing that it was on Quibi, I'm like, oh, okay, I see how they broke this up, and I can totally see how this would absolutely work. And I do like the individual stuff. I guess my only main issue is like the very beginning part with the Girl Interrupted part. Mm-hmm. I feel like that could have been its own movie. Like stretch that out a bit and make that its own movie, and then have the survival part, stretch that out, and make that its own movie.
Eric, do you feel that maybe it should have started with the survival part, with her just boarding the plane? That's like the first opening.
No. I'm saying the way it is now works, but I would have also liked the individual parts kind of stretch out as well. It's kind of like this is what we got and this is good, but if you did this would also be good, and we get like 3 or 4 movies out of it.
Okay, so that's actually a compliment regarding Survive. Yeah. Again, it's on Apple TV, it's on various digital outlets, and we will have actual links of Survive where you can get it in our show notes for the Mark Pellington film. I think by the end of the year, look, we all love Mark Pellington. We want him back for the show we said this in the interview, because we had to actually tape a podcast. We'd have Mark Pellington on for 4 hours. He is a salt of the earth kind of guy. We actually asked him, how long do you have? We were expecting like a 10 to 15 minute outing. He said, yeah, I'm here at 4. I'll be here till 8. So he's a really good guy. That said, I am divorcing that from my actual thoughts of the movie. I really enjoyed Survive. Let's start with ratings. Final thoughts, anything from Bruce and Eric before we go to ratings, guys?
One final thing. So on IMDb, they got Survive, the movie that we saw, and then they have Survive, the Quibi series. They have them as separate IMDb things.
Interesting.
The Quibi, the score on Quibi is higher than the movie.
That's interesting.
And so,
okay,
they're the exact same thing, but the score on one is higher. Like, I think the one is like 4.3 for the movie and like 6.9 for the Quibi, or it's like two scores higher.
Had to throw the 6.9 there, Eric. Yeah,
which I think. I don't know what that means, but I just thought that was
there was that 6.9 scene in the Quibi version that we didn't get. So
yeah, family show. Look, let's go. Interesting, Eric Holmes. Let's start with Bruce Perky for your ratings on Survive. Your rating.
Unlike a lot of movies where I can't just go with the flow, I went with the flow on this one and I kind of enjoyed myself. So I'm going to go 3.5 on this one.
3.5. Yes, I like Mark Pellington, but I'm a very unbiased reviewer. I give it Survive a 0. I'm giving it a 0. I hate
you do what you got to do, man.
Yeah, 0. Do not see Survive. Just kidding. I'm giving it a straight up 4 out of 5 stars for Survive. That is 3.5 from Bruce, 4 for me. Eric Holmes, final rating.
I'm probably 3.5 on this too. But you split this up into different movies and extend them out. Like there's one of these stories that's like a 5-star movie, and there's another that's like a 3-star movie, and there's another one that's kind of like a 4-star movie, and one that's like a 2-star movie. So I think it all balances out to about 3.5.
3.5 from Bruce and Eric, 4 from me. Loved all the elements. Hit us back on CinemAddicts. Tell us if you actually enjoyed Survive. Maybe, you know what? Why don't you see the movie, and then why don't you just go check to see if Quibi's still on your phone, and then watch it on your Quibi as well, and see which one does one deserve a 4.3 and does the other deserve 6.9? Yes, Eric Holmes.
Actually, thinking of like splitting it up, yeah, I think I get it. It's just a really weird thing to see the same movie on IMDb twice, and then they have like wildly different scores on there. It's kind of like hey, did you see the movie on TV or did you see it in the theater? Because apparently that matters. So there you go.
That does matter. Again, we will have the release dates or how you can find it on our show notes for CinemAddicts. Next up is Desperate Souls, Dark City, and The Legend of Midnight Cowboy. Midnight Cowboy, yes. It's a documentary on Midnight Cowboy, directed by Nancy Bursky. And yeah, that's it. I don't know. There's nothing else to say about this documentary. I'm gonna just start off with Eric Holmes with just your thoughts on the documentary. Does one have to actually be a Midnight Cowboy fan to appreciate this doc, in your opinion, Eric?
I think so. Yeah. Because this didn't really do it for me. There's the what Midnight Cowboy means for the gay community in that time, and current time, as much as it can mean anything. That was kind of the stuff you expect to be in a documentary about Midnight Cowboy. The only additional stuff that I thought was kind of interesting was the MPAA coming by, like after Midnight Cowboy was a success. They come by and it's like, look, just cut one frame, and technically we don't have to give you an X rating anymore, and it can be the rating it should have been, blah blah blah. And they're like, yeah, go kick rocks. And then they just said no. Like that part was cool, but that was like almost towards the end of the documentary, and it was like one tiny thing. Other than that, there wasn't much going on. Like the beginning was essentially Midnight Cowboy. They were just playing like 10 minutes of Midnight Cowboy. There was I can't remember the song, but they basically played like another song like all the way through with clips of Midnight Cowboy. So like a lot of the time I'm watching this documentary, I'm just kind of like, I should just be watching Midnight Cowboy. This is kind of not giving me any of that extra juice or anything that I would expect from a documentary about something like this.
Yeah, we're gonna get to you, Bruce, just very quickly. I'm on the flip side. I saw Midnight Cowboy, and then within the next hour, I saw the documentary. So it was just a really great double feature for me. Obviously, 99.9% of the people will not go into it like this. Okay. But with fresh eyes after watching Midnight Cowboy and then actually going into this documentary, I felt this was very value added. I really liked how Nancy Bursky she talked about Midnight Cowboy. She had interviews with the people involved, like Jennifer Salt, John Voigt. They had some audio clips from Dustin Hoffman, audio clips from the late director John Schlesinger. A lot of this stuff. She talks about the film and the life around the film, but then she also puts it in context within the year 1969, which I thought was interesting. I found it to be interesting stuff. Obviously, people say, oh, it's just a whole bunch of B-roll and voiceover. But for me, within the context of Midnight Cowboy, this documentary worked. But I don't know, maybe I'm in the middle. Bruce, where do you land within me and Eric's take?
I think I'm a little more in your camp, Greg. I found it pretty interesting too. Once again, so I'm kind of on the fence about whether it's more or less interesting for a fan or not. One thing a problem I have with a movie like this is, and this kind of goes to Eric's side, is that when you have a movie that shows so much of the movie, if someone hasn't seen it, they might kind of feel like, well, I've seen enough now, I don't have to watch the movie, which is be a shame. And it also does reveal some pretty major plot points in the documentary as well. So that's kind of my negative to it. My positive is pretty much the same as yours, Greg. And I really enjoyed a lot of the peripheral stuff. Like I enjoyed kind of the history of John Schlesinger. I can never say his name.
That's correct.
And and also just kind of how this fits into his career, and how, and obviously it talks about him being a gay man and filming this film and how he did or didn't incorporate that into it. But then also talking about the next film he had, which I almost wanted to see, I haven't got around to it, which is Sunday Bloody Sunday, which I think is considered the first major studio gay kiss on film. I may have that wrong, so hold it to me.
That's what they said. That's what they said in the documentary.
So I'm really curious about that movie as well. So I really like that stuff. I really like the stuff with the screenwriter and talking about how the blacklisting and all that stuff was going on. And then
that could be another documentary on Waldo Stone.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think if there is a big knock to it, it's kind of like that movie we watched about the Monument Valley, and you can even see it in the title of this movie, and that is, it kind of is trying to do all those things. And I was actually interested in pretty much all of those things, but it probably could have picked a thing and stayed a little more focused on that thing. So for example, you could just talk about the societal stuff and how this represents its time and how it's important societally for film, right? There's a whole bunch in here about how, like, you maybe don't have Mean Streets and Taxi Driver looking quite the same way if this movie doesn't exist, and stuff like that. I think that might have made it a little more distilled, but overall, I mean, I'm kind of in the bag for this, so I still had I had a great time with it.
Brian De Palma did show up, so
yeah, that's true. I remember when I saw that, I was like, Brian De Palma's here.
Brian De Palma on Zoom, yay!
But I mean, I think this is for me, it's a good supplement to the movie. So I'm good with it, but I'm not giving it. Also, it's not Lynch Oz, which I think was great.
Right.
So
again, to Bruce's point, if you're a fan of Midnight Cowboy, you may be a fan of Midnight Cowboy. So this documentary could be really good for you, but it'll also give you some value-added information on director John Schlesinger from A Kind of Loving. His movies Kind of Loving, Sunday Bloody Sunday, and even Far from the Madding Crowd. You'll get a picture of some of the other movies that you can check out if you are so inclined. By the way, I'm going to name drop. I've had a one-on-one with John Schlesinger way back when. Really nice guy. Don't remember too much because, like Bruce Perky, we are such old people that I remember. I know that I interviewed him. I think it was for this movie he did called Cold Comfort Farm, starring Kate Beckinsale way back in the day. I think that might be it. I don't know. It's one of these movies, but he was a really nice guy. Also interviewed him for a movie for Sally Field called Eye for an Eye. I bet you that's a Eric Holmes movie, Eye for an Eye, co-starring Kiefer Sutherland. You should look that up, Eric Holmes. But anyways, this is Desperate Souls, Dark City, and the Legend of Midnight Cowboy. It hits theaters and in New York and Los Angeles, June 23rd. Eric Holmes, your rating on this doc?
This is probably go 2.5 on this. With the part I mentioned, the stuff with the trial of Chicago 7, that part was interesting, although that was very not related to Midnight Cowboy at all. It was like a lot of the interesting stuff is just, here's stuff that happened while Midnight Cowboy was in theaters. But like, again, like watching the all the scenes of Midnight Cowboy just made me want to watch Midnight Cowboy. All the stuff about Abby Hoffman made me want to watch Trial of Chicago 7. Like, so many parts of this documentary made me want to watch stuff that wasn't this documentary.
That is so amazing. Yeah. I really loved it. I'm giving it 4.5. I just really dug it. Yeah. What about you, Bruce?
I'm 4 stars. I think it's good, but good. Leave it at that. Good.
Okay. So 4 stars for Bruce, 4.5 and a cough for me, and 2.5 stars from Eric Holmes. Eric Holmes levied the 2.5. You haven't done a 2.5 in a while. I haven't done a 2.5 in a while. So anyways, Eric, that means Eric is not recommending this documentary. He wanted to see other things. It's a little bit of too much of a mishmash of so many things.
I would recommend watching Midnight Cowboy.
What do you say, Eric?
We might do that later. We're going to be talking about it. So
we'll get to it in a second, but let's get to an Eric Holmes segment. Sheroes. This hits theaters and digital on June 23rd. Eric, quickly, what is it about and your take on Sheroes?
So, Sheroes are a bunch of Yas girls, Yas batch, going on they're going on a trip somewhere. I can't remember. But they end up in Taiwan because something's up with the plane. They got to make an emergency landing. They end up in Taiwan. But hey, it's fine. We'll party here. We can party here just as well as we can anywhere else. And then they go party. Go looking for some drugs, have a nice time out, party it up, and then wake up the next day, and one of our friends is kidnapped, and the drugs that we found are gone, and we are in way over our heads, and they're fighting like the cartel or whoever they got in Taiwan, the drug dealers of Taiwan, and so they got to band together, use their individual talents to see if they can find their friend. And it's kind of similar to The Hangover meets, like, I don't know, Mystery Men, maybe. some kind of in that. This is a movie that doesn't really take itself too seriously. It's kind of stupid, kind of silly, but if you can kind of take it for what it is, it's one that I had a lot of fun with, and I'd like to see more Sheroes. Sheroes 2, maybe.
You want to see a Sheroes 2? Did you mention that in the interview? Like, when are we going to expect a Sheroes 2? Can we?
I don't remember because I got donkey brains.
Okay, no worries, donkey brains.
But this is definitely like a movie that's kind of the everyone's tongue is in their cheek. They're not taking themselves too seriously, but they're just kind of having.
I wish someone's tongue was in my cheek. I would like that. I'm just lonely. I'm just with a couple of podcasters. You're making me depressed about this. I want a Shero in my life.
Yeah, but this is also a movie. I could see some people taking it a little too seriously, because like this is one of those movies where like the main characters in this are what's the word
what?
Selfish,
self-involved.
Yes, there's a word for it.
Selfless.
No, it's
self-aggrandizing.
not a self-word.
Selfie.
I can't think of words
Bruce,
right now.
Scrabble it. Self-indulgent.
They're like more important. They're entitled. There you go.
What?
Entitled.
Entitled.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Greg Truzavasti. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. But the characters in this are kind of like rich, entitled women, and so I could see certain people watching this having a big problem with that, and fair enough. But I just kind of went along with it.
What about this? If you like light and fluffy entertainment, Sheroes, it fits the bill. Is that correct or not correct? It's not fluffy entertainment. It's more than that. You think?
No, that's I don't know that I would consider it light fluffy, because that I'm thinking of like like a
Barbie
after school special type movie, which this is not. This is like definitely but they make the Taken joke in this, which I actually love the Taken joke in this. But if you take Taken and just make it more fun, that's kind of what this is.
Okay, Sheroes, it's sort of a Mystery Man meets what again? It's Mystery Men meets.
Yeah, I forgot already.
Okay.
The Hangover and Taken, he said.
Yeah, Hangover. The story's almost identical to Hangover, but it's got more of an action bent to it than the Hangover does.
Okay, so that is Sheroes. It's in theaters and digital June 23rd. Your rating, Eric Holmes?
This might be a 3-star banger. If you're in for this kind of thing, I think you're going to like it. And, if you see the entitled characters and that rubs you the wrong way, you're going to hate this movie. But yeah, it's just if you can get on its wavelength, I think you'll have fun with it. If you can't, then, nothing I can do about that. Sorry.
Okay, well, there's going to be something you can do about this movie from MGM called Surrounded. It's available on digital everywhere as we speak. No excuse. If you have some money, I think you should pony it up for Surrounded, especially if you're a Western fan. The synopsis is, quote, 5 years after the Civil War, freed woman and former Buffalo soldier Moses Mo Washington travels west to lay claim on a gold mine. The problem is she's in a stagecoach. She's just going west on the stagecoach and the stagecoach gets held up by a bunch of outlaws. One of these outlaws is played by Jamie Bell. Most of the rest of the movie has her, Mo Washington, played by Letitia Wright, being tasked with watching this outlaw while the others. Well, it's a very complex situation, but the rest of the movie has her making sure this outlaw does not escape. And again, that outlaw is played by Jamie Bell. The surrounded co-stars Jeffrey Donovan, Rhett Gelman, and the late Michael K. Williams in a very flashy supporting role. And it's directed by Anthony Mandler. I interviewed him, and you can check out our Find Your Film podcast for that interview, as well as our YouTube channel for that. But I'm a huge Western fan, and I'm trying to find faults with this movie. I'm hoping Bruce Perky finds some faults with Surrounded, because I am a couple of steps from giving this a 5-star banger. I'll be honest with you. So, Bruce, I want some pessimism and some dark blackness and existential pessimism.
You had to make this a black and white thing, and
it's a black and white thing.
I mean,
I'm gonna go to the bathroom. You guys call me when you're done.
No, okay. So tell me something bad about this movie, so I can.
I don't know if I'm able to tell you much bad about this movie. I really like this movie, and I am not really down for a lot of modern westerns. A lot of times, I feel like modern westerns kind of come across as dress up, or the production values can be really, really flat, almost TV production values, and they just don't feel cinematic. And I think this one, which is not probably this is probably not a huge budget, but I think they really make this movie look good for the budget they have. I think it's very stylish, but not overly stylized. I think it's kind of, okay, there's a few things this movie does that I think is really smart and really hard to pull off. First of all, you have like you said, kind of this action, very kind of classic style setup, right? Stranger in the town. And I like the fact they don't play it whether she's a woman or not. Like, you know she's a woman, but you're not sure what they're playing her as exactly for quite a while in this movie. But you know that she's kind of trying to stay under the radar. And I love how for the first half, it's just stranger in the town. She's got some secrets. You're not sure what's up, but she's trying not to be bothered. She's trying to kind of not be noticed. And then things go south, and she's kind of thrown into it. And then for the middle part of the movie, you kind of have a two-hander for a bunch of it. But what this movie does, I think that's really excellent and hard to do, is this could easily be a movie that's way too artsy and way too talky and gets bogged down and doesn't actually have fun with a Western, style. It doesn't actually have the stuff you want in a Western. But I think this keeps, every time you think it might go there, it pulls you back in with some great Western stuff, with stakes, with danger, with maybe an action, like kind of a short little action scene, or a scene of, a shootout, or whatever it might be. I think this movie gives you all the things you want in a Western, does it in a smart, modern way, but also doesn't go too esoteric or too artsy. I think it's got all of it. And a big chunk of that, well, all the actors do a pretty good job in this, but Letitia Wright has to hold this movie down, and she is fantastic in this movie, and it looks great. So what is the one thing I could find about this movie? the only thing I could find about this movie is I don't think that's a real tree that they're next to, this giant tree, and it kind of bothered me a little bit that it looked like a big fake tree, but that's about it. That's about all I got.
Yeah, I agree with you all 100%. Jamie Bell is great at doing the supporting work.
Very good.
Because he's an outlaw, but he has colors to his character, and you're wondering whether he and Mo will end up being sort of convenient, not friends, but they might help each other down the road. You just never know.
Well, you have to be convinced that she can be convinced maybe by him. And that's
right.
part of that is really good script writing, which I think Eric would really like this movie. That's part of that's good script writing, and a big chunk of that also is the acting between the two. So I think there's some great chemistry between those two in this movie.
I really hope, Bruce, again, on digital everywhere, June 20th, do you think it's going to be a shame if it's one of those many movies that are so good that it kind of gets buried amidst the glut of stuff?
Yeah, I am afraid of that. And I think, or it could just look like, just another cheap, run-of-the-mill Western. Because I think I'd said to you, but I think before you'd watched it or right after you watched it, I'd said, this is my favorite Western since Old Henry. I haven't seen a ton, but I've seen a few. And I think this is right up there with Old Henry as being a really, really fine Western.
I mean, you kind of buried the lead there. I would have opened with that.
Yeah. Eric, you would love Surrounded. I think this is one of these. I think Eric Holmes would give it 5 stars as well. I'm going to give it. So, well, look, Surrounded, 5 stars. You didn't convince me, Bruce. I tried to get. Yeah. So, anyways, what's your rating, Bruce?
I'm going to go 4.5. I mean, I don't know why. It probably should be. It's 4.5. This is a very, very good movie, and I think I think if people give it a chance, a lot of people can enjoy this movie. Even listen to me. I'm not a huge Western fan, and I really enjoyed this movie.
I am a poor podcaster. I'm barely a podcaster. I think Eric Holmes and Bruce Perky are more podcasters than me. But I'll tell you something. If I was a multi-billionaire, I would surround Anthony Mandler, the director, with a bunch of money. I'd lock him up in a jail cell and say, you know what? You need to make Surrounded 2, 3, 4, 5. You need to make more Westerns with freaking Letitia Wright. Bottom line.
This one and Old Henry did 2 things too, right? They're real places. They're real places. They're not a bunch of green screen. It makes a difference in a movie like this. You want to feel like they're in this place. And he talks about that in the interview. And they were in that place, and you could tell they're in that place. It's good.
It's so good. Please, everyone listening, Surrounded, if you have an inkling towards or a passion for Westerns, this is the movie to see. Yes, it's on digital. Don't wait for streaming. Bruce, I mean, we're all hard up for money, right? If you have a couple bucks, throw it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's worth it. You'll have a good night. Watch this one.
4.5 for Bruce, 5 stars for me. Eric Holmes, you're up with Mad Heidi. Mad Heidi. I was saying Casper Van Dien. This looks like a very fun action adventure, kitschy movie. Might be Eric Holmes's kind of film. Am I wrong on this? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're not wrong. This is Heidi, but they have it slathered all over the opening credits. It's a Swissploitation movie. This is kind of like a hobo with a shotgun, Planet Terror. Like it's a grindhouse movie, air quote grindhouse, but like the post grindhouse movie, grindhouse type movies, if that makes sense. But it's, if you're familiar with the story Heidi, I remember reading about it when I was a kid. I know it's about a Swiss girl named Heidi, and that's pretty much it. But she's in Switzerland. There's something going on with like the cheese trade, and then
I love this movie already. The cheese trade. Okay.
Yeah, and then so basically the Swiss army goes in. They're kind of indistinguishable from Nazis for some reason, but basically they end up pissing Heidi off, and then Heidi just goes on a rampage. The main problem with this is that it doesn't quite go far enough, I think, because it has its blood and guts moments. It was definitely funny. It played with the genre a lot, played with tropes and whatnot. But this kind of could have went further. And we had just seen Sisu, which is a perfect example of something that went just the right amount and then maybe pushed it a little too far. But that's kind of what we want. This one certainly had some parts of that where they, like someone gets hit in the head with a crossbow. Now, what's going to happen when you get hit in that head with a crossbow? Everyone knows that the crossbow, the arrow hits your head, and then it explodes, right? That's like what happens in here. It's got stuff like that. It's crazy. It's silly. I just wish it was a little more crazier and a little more sillier early on, because it took a while to kind of get to the. Like Heidi was on full display right at the beginning. It took her a while to get mad, and I wish she got mad quicker.
That's fair. Eric, the reason why we have links for this, and we're going to get to you in a second, Bruce, about this. It was screening Wednesday, June 21st as part of a one-night Fathom Events type of event. Yeah. So obviously we're missing it per this recording, but do you think Mad Heidi will play better if you're going into one of these one-night only midnight movie fests, or is it still good to see it by your lonesome via on streaming, that type of situation?
Probably better with a crowd, but even still, I think you get a crowd like, ooh, Mad Heidi, blah blah blah, Swissploitation, we're gonna get in there. The fact that it takes as long to get to where they need to get to, I think I think you need to start pre-gaming and just kind of let the movie play, and then finally get it like 20 minutes, 30 minutes in. All right, we're getting loosed up, juiced up. All right. And then you walk in, you miss the first 30 minutes, but now you're right at the part of Mad Heidi where you want to be. So it does what it sets out to do. It has exactly what's on the tin, but it just takes a little too long to get there for my taste anyway. And I think probably a lot of other people's, but once it gets there, I think you're going to start having a lot of fun with it.
Bruce Perky, did you have a lot of fun with Mad Heidi?
It just wasn't looking like it was going to be my tone. I think it looked like it winked a little bit way too much at itself. I think that was what was kind of happening, and I was not feeling it. And it also looked very, very, very like kind of bright CGI to me. And I had just seen Blood and Gold, which I loved, and I'd just seen Sisu, which I loved, and I was like, just not down for it. Maybe in the right mood, I'd be down for this one, and I probably would have watched it, but I was just like, I got too many things to watch. I'll watch something else. I would ask Eric, and I think this is probably true. This seems like the kind of movie, if you watch the trailer and you're not enjoying it, you probably won't enjoy the movie, and if you are enjoying it, you probably will enjoy the movie. This feels like a trailer will tell you exactly what you're going to get out of this movie. Am I right about that? Probably.
For the second half, yes. For the first half, it just takes a while to get to where the trailer is promising. But
Gotcha.
you will get to the promised land. It'll just take you a little longer than I think you want to wait.
So I wouldn't listen to me because I didn't watch enough of it to really talk. So.
Okay, but the person who did watch everything of Mad Heidi, what is your rating?
You know what? We'll go with 3 banger for this one too.
Fair.
Yeah, if you're like if you watch the Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez's Grindhouse, if you like Hobo with a Shotgun, if you like Machete, this is another one of those type of movies. And if that's what you dig, this is exactly that.
Okay, Eric, our final movie of the week before we get to Bruce's What's in the Box pick is this documentary called Here is Better. Obviously, you are the expert on this documentary because you did the interviews. Bruce also saw it. So what is this documentary about? It's on VOD and also playing in New York and LA. We'll get to that in a second on Friday. Eric Holmes, what is Here is Better about?
It's basically just following around people with depression, PTSD, people with different walks of life. I think the only thing they have in common is that they're all ex-military from one branch or another. But you have different people with different PTSDs for different reasons and different levels. It just kind of goes all over on depression, PTSD, and kind of talking about it, different treatments and different things that coping mechanisms that you can work through. Some people are successful at it, others are not. Far too many are not. But this is just another one of those movies about something that a lot of us deal with, and hopefully this is a documentary that you can watch if you are dealing with it, or someone that's dealing with it. They can maybe oh, you know what, I didn't know that was a thing I could do. I will go look into that and maybe I can get some help.
Here is Better. It's directed by Emmy Award winning filmmaker Jack Youngleson. Bruce Perky, you also saw it, like Eric. Your thoughts on the doc?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good documentary. I think what it shines at is to really show people. I think this is going to be one of those documentaries that will really help people who maybe for one reason or another or not, they either haven't identified their PTSD or they don't feel like they can do anything about it, or they don't feel like they should do anything about it, because this does a great thing toward highlighting the different types of PTSD and how they're all valid. And I think that was really, really highlighted in this in a good way. For example, there's one person in here who didn't really undergo like violent trauma as far as seeing his friends get blown up or getting blown up himself or seeing people shot in front of him, but he was in a constant state of threat. But he didn't feel like his PTSD was kind of real, like, because he knew all these people who did do those really extreme, like physically violent experiences. And I think it's really important in that aspect to kind of show kind of the different ways that it can insidiously, kind of get into a person's psyche and kind of destroy them. I think the only negative side to me was I wanted to hear more about like, what is the challenge like in the actual I guess, system for people to get help. Because I can't believe they kind of make it look like, hey, if you finally identify that you have these problems, just go to the VA and you'll be fine. We can take care of you. They don't say that. They're not that flip about it. But they kind of make it seem like the getting to the help is kind of easy, even though the help itself might be hard to work for you, which I doubt that that's the case. I would bet it's really hard for a lot of people to get help, even if they want it in a lot of situations. I don't know. I might be totally talking out my butt because I haven't dealt with this. And I look at Eric's ready to talk. So.
I can speak to with experience on this. It's very difficult to get help. There are suicide hotlines, or therapists you can go to, all sorts of stuff. I was in a really bad place. I needed to talk to someone. I was looking for a therapist or a psychologist near me, and I did not have insurance, so they would not take me. I'm like, that's fine. I just need to talk to someone. What does it cost per hour? No, we can't do it without insurance. I'm about to put a damn bullet in my mouth. Who the hell do I talk to? And it was like pulling teeth trying to find the right person. So Bruce, you were not wrong. However, to this,
how did you get help then? How did you get help for that?
By the skin of my teeth. I just like did a lot of sleeping, but
that's horrible. That's horrible with lack of help there.
But to Bruce's point of this documentary, it would be great to have that in here. I think what you're touching on, Bruce, is another documentary entirely.
Yeah,
that is not something that needs to be a piece of a documentary like this. That's another issue, a whole big problem that needs to be addressed on its own merits, I think.
I agree. I just was kind of surprised that it didn't at least come up somewhere in here with these people. That I can't imagine they all just had a ability to just easily find this, because it can't be easy. But I agree with you. Absolutely. That would be its own documentary and should be its own documentary, because there's so much lip service to supporting our troops. And this specifically is a place where I think most of troops don't get supported very much. So, and it's like
yourself up by the bootstraps.
Yeah. We're done with you now. You've done, you've been cannon fodder. Now we're ready to just go on and do something else. Anyway, like you said, that's a different documentary and not this one. But what this one does, I think it does pretty darn effectively. So
I would also say that they really brought home the idea of the guy running for mayor with his wife. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he was going through his depression, but you could see that she was going through her stuff too. She didn't have the same PTSD, but kind of. And we talked about that with
secondary PTSD. I think we
talked about that with Bone Cold. They touch on that with Bone Cold, where here's the guy with the PTSD. Now he's bringing it home to his wife, and now she's got that. Then you also have people there dealing with the stuff that's like, oh, we can get you help, and it's like, no, I don't want help. I deserve death. Like I'm not worth saving. Like, and that's a very real emotion too. So yeah, this it didn't hit on the thing Bruce did, but actually that's not. I'm not crapping on you, Bruce. I think that's a really good.
No, I didn't take it that way.
Really good point. But the stuff they did hit on, I thought it hit on pretty truthfully and pretty great.
By the way, Bruce, I deserve. I've worked so hard. I can crap on you whenever I want to. Correct?
That's a special fee to do that. You have to spend. You
gotta be part of our CinemAddicts Patreon for that, folks.
Yeah, that's the poop Treon that we do.
Poop Treon.
Okay. In all seriousness, what is your rating for Here Is Better, Bruce Berkey?
I think I'll go 4 stars. I think a solid, good documentary. Leave it at that.
Okay, Eric Holmes.
Yeah, I'd probably go 4 as well. And I didn't even think of the thing Bruce brought up, but now they brought up, I can't unthink it.
Sorry, guys.
Oh yeah,
that's what I do to people. I give them things they can't unthink.
But I don't know if the filmmakers are listening to this, because they did such a good job here. Maybe that's a sequel. Here Is Better, and then Here Is Better Too. Get Better Here or something. Whatever they're going to call it. But talk about actually getting the journey you have to go to get help, which is not as easy, because you're exactly right. A lot of people in these documentaries, not just this one, but just in documentaries in general, they're already there. They're already in therapy. Like the journey to get there is often a bigger hill to climb than I think most people realize.
So Here Is Better. It's playing on June 23rd, specifically in Los Angeles at the Lamley Santa Monica. If you're in New York, it is playing at the Quad. Now, if you are neither in New York or Los Angeles, you can actually check out Here Is Better on VOD June 27th. And again, you can check out Eric's interviews for Here Is Better over at our Find Your Film podcast feed. So finally, we're going to get to our box movie. But before we get to our box movie, we're getting to Peter Beta, who does a drum. Pete doesn't do the drum kit. He does the screams every week. We're saying drop that beat, but there's a lot of screaming this week on Middle Class Film Class. I don't know if the podcast feed is refreshed. He and his crew, Joseph Navarro and Tyler Noe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, am I correct? Yes. And Peter Beta, they are doing a review of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I think that's a recent episode they did. Are you guys a fan of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang? Have you guys seen it? I'm
a fan of just Shane Black in general, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not actually talking to Peter Beta because he's asking me some trivia questions. I'm trying to pretend I know thing or two about movies. I'm staying away from that because I'm going to show. I'm already an idiot, Pete. Don't bother me with your movie questions. Yes, Eric Holmes. Don't bother me, Peter Beta.
So, Bruce, your episode already aired.
Mine aired. Yes.
Middle Class Film Class trivia.
Yes.
I believe mine's coming out this Friday. Just listen to it. It's good.
Oh, okay. Well, if Peter Beta,
I hope one of the three of us makes it to the next round because I sure did.
I can't say whether I made it or not, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether I made it or not. You got to listen to it because it turned out really good.
I will.
It's called the MCFC Movie Trivia Tournament. They've been holding it. There was like a round one that was round one. Episode 3 was last Friday. I think they're doing a bunch of episodes for these trivia tournaments. And Peter Beta has been messaging me about the trivia tournament, and I think I'm going to actually just reply false. That's the only thing I'm going to say. False, 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 false. That's all you're going to get.
What is trivia?
Yeah, but Pete, every single week, thank you so much for dropping that scream.
Remove your hand from the box, and you die.
What's in the box?
Pain.
All right, guys, we're back. Bruce, you commanded us to see Midnight Cowboy in preparation for this documentary. You made me watch an extra movie. It's a 0-star experience for me. I really hated Midnight Cowboy.
It's okay. You'll get over it, I'm sure. We'll get you some PTSD.
It's about a male hustler named Joe Buck. He's somewhere in, West Texas and Texas, and everybody's talking, but everyone's talking. The song is like everybody's talking, but Joe Buck's really not talking a little bit in the first opening minutes because he's boarded on a bus from Texas, I believe, to New York. And I think about maybe 12 to 15 minutes or maybe 12-ish minutes is devoted on that bus ride to getting into New York, which is really cool. But it centers on Joe Buck's, I believe that's not his name, his experiences of life in New York. Eventually he befriends he's not a male hustler, but he hustles in his own right for money and food and just to live on the streets of New York. And that is Ratso Rizzo, who he does not like to be called Ratso Rizzo. That character is played by Dustin Hoffman. So Joe Buck, played by Jon Voight. Dustin Hoffman is Ratso Rizzo. It's that was the 1969 version of the characters on Lenny and George from Of Mice and Men. They're sort of that version from the 60s, and it's directed by John Schlesinger. It's based on a novel, iconic film. I believe it won. Did it win
Best Picture?
Best Picture that year. Schlesinger won Best Director. Just a critically acclaimed film. It's iconic. What else, Eric Holmes? What else can I say about Midnight Cowboy that hasn't already been said as far as a plot or anything?
It's written by Waldo Scott, who wrote
Waldo Salt. Yes, Waldo Salt.
Midnight Cowboy, Serpico, Day of the Locust, Coming Home. Wrote some good ones.
Yeah, Waldo Salt. Yeah, Coming Home, and then Jon Voight won the Best Actor Oscar for
James Leo Herlihy of the Herlihy Boy from SNL.
Yeah, yes.
Let me sleep in your bed. Let the boy sleep in your bed. You're not even there. Just let him sleep in your damn bed.
So, and it's again like Eric said.
Oh wait, no, it wasn't that guy. That was someone else. But
someone else. But it's based on that novel by that aforementioned author, Bruce Berkey. Let's. It's your segment. What's in the box? I'm going to shut up now. Midnight Cowboy.
Honestly, you guys should talk about it more because I'm curious to hear your takes on it. This is just one of my favorite movies. Period. I think I've seen it 4 or 5 times probably, but I hadn't seen it for a good 20 years. So I just thought this is an excuse to watch it again, see if it still resonates with me. Because sometimes after 20, 30 years, a movie just doesn't sit the same way. And this is from 69.
Yeah.
There you go. And this movie is just, I think, to sell it to people who are younger, who don't really love 70s or 60s movies, or just don't go back that far very often, or they hear about these classic movies and are just like always disappointed. To me, this is a movie that you can watch and has so much to offer and is a lot funnier than they might expect. It's a surprising movie. You talked about how it's 15 minutes on the bus, which that kind of gets to the core of what this movie does so well, which is it just is like a time capsule of every place it goes. Just what is it like to ride a bus in 1969 in Texas to New York? What is it like to be in downtown New York in the late 60s? Good and bad, high class and low class, all just intermixed. And like we talked earlier, if you want to see what led to Mean Streets and Taxi Driver and all these kind of really gross versions of New York, this is definitely one of the iconic first versions of that on the big screen. But this watch reminded me again how surprising it is. This does crazy stuff too, with flashbacks and fantasy sequences intermixed with the actual story here. I mean, the first almost hour, you hardly even get Ratso Rizzo. But when you get, and so it's really just kind of just the whole first half is just Joe Buck, starry-eyed, if you can be starry-eyed, doofus, thinking he's going to make it rich by servicing a bunch of rich ladies in New York because he's an awesome hunky cowboy. That's kind of his attitude. He's just going to go in there and it's going to be awesome. And the first hours almost is mostly just him like discovering one step at a time how that's not going to necessarily happen that way. But then the true magic is when he meets Ratso and Rico, and that becomes the core of the center of this movie. It just goes to the next level, and it's got so much heart, a lot of humor, some real drama, and it's got one of the most perfect endings of a movie I can imagine. I love this movie a lot, but I'd like to hear what you guys think of this movie.
There's a sequence, and it's not a big spoiler, but there is a changing of the clothes sequence that is handled, I think, in such a subtle fashion, and it's powerful. It's a very powerful moment if you've been following the journey, okay? And it's almost like a throwaway scene. So it's just one of those things. Bruce, you were talking about the editing of the movie within the flashbacks. You need to watch the movie several times just to even try to decipher what the flashbacks are about, because they kind of don't explain themselves. Or you get a lot of these really interesting edited images. There's like sort of a montage from the director's POV because you're learning Buck's I guess his origin story from flashbacks. And then you get to a party, and then there's a whole different kind of flashback because it's flashbacks from sort of this Andy Warhol industry kind of situation going, and that becomes very surreal. There's so many different tones in sections of this movie, and it ends so well. I think everything about this is perfect. The one thing I would say, as far as warning people for Midnight Cowboy, is not the sexuality. It was rated X for a certain sequence, but no, not that. That's Bob Balaban was in that sequence, but it's a tough movie to take at certain points when it talks about the tough living in New York. If you have any kind of skin invested in Joe Buck and the life of Ratso Rizzo as friends, or maybe just convenient friends because they're both trying to survive, it's tough watching them sometimes because it really gets in the down and dirty as far as trying to make it to the next day in New York. I really love this movie. Eric Holmes, your thoughts on Midnight Cowboy?
Yeah,
it wasn't your first time watching it, right? Maybe second time watching it or something?
No, it was like, I think I saw it like twice before. But I think this has less to do. I mean, maybe it inspired Taxi Driver, but I'd see something like this more inspiring something like Shawshank Redemption. Because this is the love story that's not a love, an air quote love story. The experimental filmmaking that they do with the flashbacks are probably not what you would expect for something called Midnight Cowboy. And then I agree with Bruce. It's one of the best endings because it's weird because they finally made it. They're there. It's bright. It's shiny. Everything's in front of them, and that's when it's going to happen. It's like even John Voight's face, like when. When
his acting is so good there,
because he's like sad but kind of confused and kind of like, I guess I just stand here.
Yep. Yeah, the way he plays that is amazing.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of that was written and how much he kind of improvised. It had to be pretty much written. And also, we're not going to talk about what actually happens at the end, but there's like a weird beat in that end that didn't have to happen. I'll just say there's a point where the bus stops.
Yeah.
And then another beat. And the fact that they have those two beats as opposed to what it could have just gone straight to the final shot. But I think that having that extra little beat in there adds a really interesting kind of, I can't say context to it.
Yeah.
I just think it's... go ahead.
I also think this is probably one of Dustin Hoffman's... I mean, this guy has to be like one of his best characters, other than like mumbles from Dick Tracy and
Rain Man,
Little Big Man. Oh yeah, Rain Man. Yeah, Little Big Man would probably be another one.
Outbreak, Sphere.
Yeah. Nope. I was really good in Outbreak, and no one ever talks about that one.
Very, very good, Eric Holmes. Love it. The Dustin Hoffman impression. Look, in fairness of Hoffman, 1967, The Graduate, one of the most iconic endings ever in cinema. And then 2 years later, in 69, we're talking about iconic endings. Look, we're not really we don't want to spoil the ending for you, but it is literally one of the most iconic endings you're going to see. Yeah. Okay, so again, it's Midnight Cowboy is worth watching other than that ending. And I feel so embarrassed that I had an one-on-one interview with John Schlesinger back in 95. And I remember telling myself, I can't wait to see Midnight Cowboy after this review, after interviewing him. And it took me 28 friggin' years to get to watching Midnight Cowboy. I saw Urban Cowboy first before Midnight Cowboy.
I mean, Urban Cowboy was pretty good. I didn't
fairness, yes, I love Urban
I didn't
Cowboy.
give the when we talked about the documentary Desperate Souls, Dark City, and the Legend of Midnight Cowboy, I did not give it its fair due, comparing the ending of Midnight Cowboy to the ending of The Graduate. You know, they both take place in the back of a bus. They both start off like, hey, we're doing it. Yeah, we're good. And then as it goes, it's like, and then the realization sets in.
Yeah, reality, life sets in.
This is not a happy ending. What the hell?
Yeah, look, you're saying it's not a happy ending, but the good thing about both endings is one can interpret it however you feel. I agree with you, Eric. I feel both of those movies do not have a happy ending, but things, I don't know, maybe, who knows, maybe Midnight Cowboy could have a happier ending because of certain situations. I don't know.
From a certain perspective, like, my heart can't beat unless you tell it to. That ending is not a happy ending, but it is for one of the characters.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
The character will not say it out loud, but there's a great amount of relief.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, we're talking about Dustin Hoffman performances, and this is the Dustin Hoffman performance. I think we either covered on Find Your Film or CinemAddicts. Do you remember, guys, the movie that we loved from Dustin Hoffman? If I recall, I really loved it. I think you guys loved it too.
Yeah. Where the two with the daughters and stuff in it, the daughter and the son. Yeah,
Sam and Kate.
Yeah, that was good.
Directed and written by Darren Legallo. So I guess it's available on digital right now. You can catch that if you want.
What was the name of that one again?
Sam and Kate. Came out in 2022. So hour and 15
minutes.
I
was in Tootsie. Duh. Of course he was in Tootsie.
Oh, God. How can we not say Tootsie?
Of course, Tootsie. Kramer versus Kramer, right? Kramer.
I love Kramer. Kramer versus Kramer was like on regular rotation when I was a kid.
Okay. Yeah, Making French Toast. Marathon Man. Right? Come on.
Which is also
Little Fockers is a family show, and that's a family movie. It just sounds weird
right?
as all.
Bruce, what are you saying?
Oh, is it Marathon Man? Is that
Roy
director? Same director?
Yes, it is John Schlesinger.
Yeah.
Right? And Laurence Olivier as the best dentist in the world, and Roy Scheider's in that. So yeah, did I mention
the Dog, Sleepers, Hook? Yeah.
Did I mention Sphere and Outbreak? No. Yeah. Okay.
Where's Peter Pan? Definitely Hook. Looking for Peter Pan.
Look at you. I love it, Eric Holmes. So yeah. All right, we are closing on CinemAddicts. Final ratings on
Raymond Babbitt as Captain.
All right, so 5 stars for me. I guess 5 stars for Midnight Cowboy. Eric Holmes, your rating on Midnight Cowboy?
I mean, it's a classic. I think this is definitely worthy of classic status.
Could you say 6.9 stars for Midnight Cowboy, and then we throw in the 1.9?
Oh yeah,
we're gonna add that to the documentary.
Yeah.
You wanna add the
6.9 stars,
and then subtract it. Add 1.9 to the other documentary you gave 2.5 to.
Greg, thanks for reminding me. That was the obvious star rating, and I just completely right over my head.
6.9 stars for a 1969 movie, of course, Eric Holmes. No worries, you're welcome, sir. Bruce Perky, your rating.
Yes, 5-star classic, obviously.
5-star classic, yeah. Midnight Club. Okay. Hopefully, Bruce Perky is taking something out of the box that is a 5-star classic. What you got for us?
Well, we pushed from last week Mr. Death.
Oh, you're right.
Which you thought was one thing, but it's something different. It is directed by Aaron Morris, and it's from 1999. And I've heard of this movie. I never watched it. It sounds really uplifting, but it also sounds really interesting and not really uplifting. It's a cinematic portrait of the life and career of an infamous American execution device designer who just also happens to be a Holocaust denier. So this guy sounds like a treat, but we will find out about it. Mr. Death.
We will be back next week for Cinematics with pretty big news. I was thinking it was going to be pretty big news at the end of the episode, at the beginning of the episode. Maybe it won't be so big, but no, it might be kind of big, but it'll be very interesting for next week, what we're going to talk about. Eric Holmes, you have any final thoughts?
Yes, go to findyourfilmpodcast.com. I made up a movie poster for Cinematics. Hooked, obsessed, frenzied, mad Cinematics. I got the you and your face and my face are on the basically Sabrina with Bruce's face on the scanners. Has the lettering and kind of color palette of Vertigo, rated X, because we just don't watch Midnight Cowboy. I'm like, well, if we're in a movie together, it's definitely going to be rated. So I made this poster and just for the hell of it, and then I made a t-shirt and hoodie design for it. I probably won't keep the poster up much longer, maybe like another week or two, and then I'll take it down because I don't just go take a peek at it. I don't think anyone wants to actually buy one, but the shirts look pretty sweet. And
the shower curtains, cinematic shower curtains are going they're off the hook. They are literally off the hook. Check out our shower curtains. Yes, Eric Holmes.
But I think what I'm going to do, since I'm having so much fun with this, I think I might make some more of these posters, like put up like another poster like every 2 weeks or something, and then maybe have like a t-shirt design to go along with like the lettering or the logo or whatever I use for it. But we'll go with that for as long as I go with it, as long as I'm interested in it. But if you want to go take a peek, go take a peek. If you want to buy it, even better, but you don't have to.
Support us on Find Your Film Podcast for merch. We have a different, I don't know. We might have decals, shot glasses, horse-drawn carriage carts, shopping with shower curtains, a whole bunch of stuff. FindYourFilmPodcast.com. Thank you, Eric Holmes, for doing so much hard work for supporting our merch on Find Your Film and definitely Cinematics. Bruce Perky, your final thoughts?
My final thought is I think the news next week might be dagger-sized.
Oh, it would be dagger-sized. And, if you're going by me, it might be B-sized because maybe I might have thought, there's fingers coming out of your... Eric Holmes, there's fingers coming out of your hand, hashtag family show, but we'll see what happens next week. But until then, we're here, Cinematics, and hopefully we'll get some kind of message from Anderson County next week. Take care, guys. Bye.